Apologize, I just got off the field. But I'm here to discuss LeGarrette Blount. I made a decision on September 4th in consultation with my athletic director, the president of this university, and Larry Scott. And I'll reiterate again, that was my decision and my decision only to suspend LeGarrette Blount for the season. I made it as harsh a penalty as I could so that he understood the ramifications of what was ahead of him. I did not make it an indefinite suspension at that time because I didn't want him coming to me every day and saying, when can I come back? At that time, though, I don't live in a vacuum. And I said on that day that there's not a manual for what went on. And I didn't make this decision by myself. So I reached out to a lot of people on this campus, my athletic director, our president, and a lot of people gave me a lot of good counsel on this. I also reached out beyond this campus to people like Dr. Harry Edwards and Tony Dungy specifically to find out what's the best plan I should put in place for this young man. At that time, and that was September 4th, we started an open dialogue, myself and LeGarrette, about what he needs to do to change things around. At that time, I never gave him any indication that I was ever going to bring him back because I didn't feel at that time that that was necessary. He needed to prove to me that he wanted to change and he wanted to make this situation right. On September 15th, Dr. Harry Edwards came up here. He spoke with our team, and he spent a lot of time with LeGarrette as an individual, and I wanted to get his take on what he felt about LG as a person because I see LG every day, and I know how I feel, and I can be tainted because I do see him every day, and I do love LeGarrette. But I also know that the decisions have to be made in the best interest of himself and this football program. I also spent a lot of time myself with Dr. Harry Edwards. I've talked about this being a teachable moment. It's not just a teachable moment for LeGarrette, it's a teachable moment for everybody on this football team, and specifically for me. I'll be the first one to tell you, I do not have all the answers, men. But if I don't have the answers, I'll go to people that can help me with them. And I really want to right now thank Dr. Edwards and thank Tony Dungy for their time, because they didn't have to help me, but they wanted to. And I really, truly appreciate both of those men and what they've done to help LeGarrette in this situation. After Dr. Edwards left, we started to put a plan in place for LeGarrette. That plan was finalized last Friday on September 25th. He signed a piece of paper in my office. I signed the same thing. And we made an agreement. And that agreement basically is that there are some academic and behavioral ladders that he has to climb for him to ever gain an opportunity to play football again. I am not reinstating LeGarrette Blount right now, and make sure everybody understands that. What we put in place is a plan that he will have the opportunity, and that date won't be at least until the Stanford game, that he could come back and play at this school. And the ladders in the plan that's in place is going to be kind of difficult. And now, again, LeGarrette will fall under a microscope because everything he does will be judged. But as LeGarrette knows, and I know, this thing's entirely up to him. As we move forward, and reason that this was released this way, this is the first week of school. There's a lot of things that dealt with academic ladders that he has to climb. It really didn't mean anything until school started here at Oregon. So I also wanted the opportunity to tell our team. And I didn't meet with our team because of the way everybody runs off the field and gets to class and all those other things till last night. And my players first and foremost. And the only decision I wrestled with is when do I announce it? So if anybody has any questions, I'm here.
Coach Kelly, with this announcement, are you admitting you made a mistake when you handed down punishment so quickly?
No. I made the right decision on September 4th, and he understands the gravity of the situation.
But you said absolutely he would not be playing.
Yes. But I also consulted with people, and I'm going to be the first to tell you that it's about discipline to me is about one thing and one thing only, behavior improvement. It's not about punishment. And we put a better plan in place for LeGarrette's behavior improvement. And I'm not going to stick my head in the sand and be a stubborn person and say, I gave my word and that's the way it's going to be. And it's not a football decision. It's a human being decision. It's about that individual. And he's got a lot of things that he's got to do. But it's on him.
But what does it say about your word? Should the team read into this at all? Does, when you say one thing, that you could change your mind later?
No, it says about the way I discipline our team is about behavior improvement. And if you show behavior improvement, then I will address the situation. If we want to get into, is it my word or all those other things, that is inconsequential to me. What matters to me is LeGarrette Blount and the other 104 players in that room next door.
Chip, was LeGarrette's letter yesterday in the Oregon Daily Emerald, was that part of the plan part of the ladder you're talking about?
Yes.
Specifically, what are the requirements as part of this behavioral ladder you described?
We have academic and behavioral and football related ladders that he's going to climb. I'm not going to get into specifics.
Are the academics different than what all the other players have to abide by?
No.
Coach, what have you seen from LeGarrette between the incident and deciding to give him this plan that has enabled you to put a plan like this and give him a chance?
I seen a young man that knows that he did something wrong on September 3rd, and that he wants a chance to prove that he can do that. And that's what he proved. You know, he called me the afternoon of September 4th and said, Coach, we need to get a hold of Coach Peterson. I never told him to do that. And to me, that was the first step that things make sense to LeGarrette. He knows he did something wrong. He knows he did something very, very wrong. And we're giving him an opportunity. There's a distinct possibility he will never play football here again. But the ball is now in LeGarrette's court. And then once we get to that point, that I feel that he has fulfilled that plan, I'll do the same exact thing I did on September 4th. I will consult with our athletic director, I will consult with the president of the university, and I will consult with Larry Scott, the commissioner of the Pac-10, and say that it is my decision that we should bring him back. Will you guys allow us to do that?
Coach, you call this a teachable moment.
Mm-hmm.
You could go back to September 4th. Would you make the decision that quickly?
Yes.
Will you have said the strong language that he will not be
Yes.
again?
Because he needed to understand that, in my opinion, the reason I did it that way is if I said you're suspended for 4 games, I couldn't change that to a 12-game suspension. But if I said I suspended him for the season, he understands the ramifications of that.
Did your initial decision have to do with all of the elements in play? That it was rerun over and over on ESPN? That this was your first big game against Boise State?
No, my decision was based upon the incidents that occurred that evening. Whether it happened, whether it was on TV or didn't happen, I wouldn't have reacted any differently.
You mentioned Bellotti and Riviere and Scott. What communications did you have with them, and what was the reaction of those 3 individuals specifically?
To putting a plan in place for LeGarrette is that from our president is that first and foremost on the first day when I met with president on September 4th is what do we do with the individual? There has to be a punishment meted out, but we're not going to throw people out on the street. That's not what we're all about. We are educators first and foremost. And they have been in consultation, and Mike and President Rivera have been in consultation the entire time, and they're aware that this has been in place and that I was going to bring people in from outside to be able to counsel LeGarrette and myself.
At the Pac-10, there was pretty strong statements initially put out that seemed to back the strength of your initial reaction. And so I wondered, did they question this decision at all when you initially approached them with the idea?
Again, I will ask the Pac-10 for permission to bring him back. That's my decision. They can tell me no at that point in time.
Have you talked to Larry Scott about this?
Personally, no, I haven't. I know Mike Bellotti, our athletic director, has discussed this with Larry Scott. There's a chain of command that I go through. I go to Mike, and Mike talks to them. So
You know, Larry and Mike.
that's a question for Mike.
How would you characterize the reaction of the team?
Our team's fine. Last night, they knew about it. You know, they said the same thing. The ball's in LeGarrette's court. If LeGarrette proves that he deserves an opportunity to come back, then they're all for it. If he doesn't prove it, then LeGarrette has no one to blame except for himself.
How much input did his teammates have in this decision?
None.
What's the significance of the Stanford game? Why is that the first one?
Because it's a month out. You know, the incident happened to me on September 3rd. We're right around a month. And then he's got another month. It's a month of school, too. You know, school just started for us on Tuesday, Rob. So, you know, it wasn't I can't obviously put some academic ladders in there and then be in 2 weeks of school and say everything's fine. So, you know, I felt like that was enough to get him. And it will also really be, doing the math, a 7 or 8 game suspension. You know, if it was an NCAA violation and he was just suspended for fighting, it would have been 1 game with a maximum of 2.
Yeah, there's been a couple other incidents nationally of physical contact between players in games. Did that come into play?
No, because my decision wasn't based upon just what happened on the field of play with Byron Hout. There were other incidents involved, and that's why I levied the decision I made on the 4th. If it was just the fighting thing, I would have gone the NCAA rule if that was the only thing that was the indication of it.
What other things came into play in making that decision?
On September 4th, there were more incidents that occurred besides just him punching Byron Hout. I mean, there were incidents, as you guys have seen the tape, him leaving the field. There was more to that than just a one-punch incident. If it was a one-punch incident, we would have reacted the same way the NCAA reacted.
Chip, when the idea of reinstating him came up, were you ever worried about your credibility to say one thing and do another?
You're going to get critiqued in this job and every step of the way. My concern is LeGarrette.
So the Garrett's concern, concern for him
Outweighed what people will say, bad PR about me. Yeah, it really did.
Are you worried that you will see some criticism now from this because it was?
I've seen criticism no matter what my decision is going to be made, and I think whenever you're in a position to make decisions, a lot of people are going to agree with you, a lot of people are going to disagree with you. But I don't take a poll of what other people think. I want the people that understand the situation, and I valued their opinions. And I valued Mike's opinion, I valued our president's opinion, I valued Larry Scott's opinion, I valued Tony Dungy's opinion, I valued Dr. Harry Edwards' opinion. And both Tony, and speaking with Tony this morning and Dr. Edwards last night, are available if you guys want to reach out to them and talk to them. They're more than happy to speak to you about the situation. And we're not hiding anything. You know, this isn't a clandestine maneuver about PR or anything like that. It's a human being decision about a young individual that has a teachable moment, and now he has an opportunity to see what he can do with it. I'm nervous because I think there's a lot of pressure on LeGarrette, but he got to be able to handle that. And his first opportunity to come back won't be the Stanford game. And there's a distinct possibility that he will never be back. So I'm not reinstating him today, and I'm making sure that everybody understands that point.
When was your first conversation with Coach Dudley?
That Saturday, I think, afterwards, or the Sunday, I reached out to him, to some of the people I know in the NFL, and, you know, just wanted to make sure that I didn't want to be, you know, the guy that called him and got him on the phone and said, you know, hey, can I help you? And because I know the type of person he was, he would have said yes. Is that, could you reach out to Tony and tell him that I would like to speak with him? And he was more than happy. He called and left me his number and said, I'd love to talk to you.
But at the same time, it was like the current Washington discussion.
Yeah, all that stuff was in place. You know, for some people, this incident ended on September 4th when I suspended him. For me, it was just starting. Is what do we do now with LeGarrette as an individual? And what can we do to really bring him out of this? And that's what we have to do. And all I'm doing right now is creating an environment where he has an opportunity to be successful. But this is all on him right now.
Coach, when you say that other things happened on the field that day, do you mean the taunt by the Boise State player, and do you mean?
No, I'm not talking about anything to do with the Boise State player at all. I'm talking about after the incident where he punched the young man from Boise State, what transpired after on his walk to the locker room and all those other things.
Do you mean the fan that slapped LeGarrette and the fan that held the chair?
No, I have nothing to do with the fans at Boise State, nor I have nothing to do with the player at Boise State. I'm talking about LeGarrette's actions.
But do you think that contributed to his?
I think a lot of factors contributed to it, but whatever factors contributed to it, they are unacceptable in his actions and what he did that night.
Have you talked to Boise State's coach?
I talked to Chris Peterson the day after the incident.
But I mean, before today, about what your decision is.
No.
Do you care?
No, I mean, Chris takes care of his program, I take care of mine.
You have a game tomorrow. And
Yeah,
you're
we do.
concerned about making this announcement during a game week.
Yeah, but we got games the rest of the year, Rob, you know, and I didn't want this to be, you know, a secret, and then everybody thought we did some backdoor dealing, and then all of a sudden I pop up in Stanford and say, hey, LeGarrette's playing for us. You know, it doesn't work that way. You know, and that's the one decision I wrestled with in this whole thing is when do you announce it? You know, I was trying to think maybe if we could get to our open date so we could kind of dispel some things, but I don't want anybody to think that this is a backdoor dealing and anybody else had anything to do with this. Is that it was a plan that's been in place in terms of really it didn't come to fruition really until last Friday when I kind of had everything in place from talking to the people that and getting things set up so that there's a paper trail that we can follow, and it's not just I just check stamp this about 3 weeks from now and say, yeah, I think LeGarrette's cool, let's bring him back. You know, that's not what it's all about. There's a specific plan in place for him, and it took a long time for me from the 4th of September until last Friday to get that plan in place.
Chip, just to be clear on the reinstatement, this would be, it could be the Stanford game or.
No earlier than the Stanford game.
Chip, just to make sure I understand, you're saying that as you sat here on September 4th, whatever day it was, and said you would not play again,
Mhm.
had in your mind thinking you could possibly play.
No, on that day he was done. You know, because he could have easily on that day, George, gone to his house, put his clothes together, and gone home. And he stood up.
So you,
And I put in plan in place. At that time, I reached out to some people in the country to find out what can I do to help this young man. But on September 4th, I had no feelings about bringing him back at that point in time.
Coach, at what point did you start thinking there might be during these consultations with the outside people, at what point did you start thinking there's a chance LeGarrette could come back this season?
About 2 weeks ago. And then could we all together, and it's not just me, could we all together put a plan in place that he could adhere to and that had distinct benchmarks that he would have to meet so that it was very spelled out for him and there was no gray area in what he has to do to get back into this thing.
But you said you felt it necessary to reach out to others for advice. Why not suspend him indefinitely or hold off on making a decision until you have the advice of those necessary to make an appropriate decision?
Because I wanted LeGarrette to understand the ramifications of his action, and I thought an indefinite suspension at that time would just leave the cloud of doubt, and every week would be, is he coming back this week? Is he coming back this week? Is he coming back this week? I think we as a football program and LeGarrette as a person had to understand there was a finality to it, and we all moved on from that point. But I didn't stop thinking about LeGarrette Blount on September 4th. My whole deal after that was, what can I do to now help him? And that's why I made the decision. And that's why I did it in that manner.
So the idea of reinstating it, did that come after you talked to Dr. Edwards?
It's after I talked to a lot of people, not specifically Dr. Edwards. It's after I talked to Mike. It's after I talked to the president. It's after I talked to Tony. It's after I talked to Harry Edwards. It's after I talked to Kermit Washington. There's a lot of other people that were involved in this decision to influence me. And then to me, it became, you know what? By his actions in the last couple of weeks, we're going to put something together to see if he can really do this.
Was there any piece of advice you got from any of those people that put you over the edge to say, okay, let's just reinstate it?
No, I don't think that there's one particular thing that I can say, but I think they were all very, very, very good sounding boards for me.
LeGarrette has been pretty bummed after this whole thing, and I don't know if that's by your order or just his personal decision. The letter in the Emerald yesterday was the first time we've really heard from him other than in Boise. Is that all part of your plan, and can you describe how you felt reading the letter in the Emerald?
It's part of both of our plans, is that, again, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, it's not about words. It's about actions. So he can talk about it all he wants, but that's not what he's about. He needs to prove. That's why he has been mum, and that's why he'll continue to be mum.
When will he be available?
And I don't know the exact, I can't give you that, Rob. I know he's not available today.
Is he undergoing anger management type counseling?
We have behavioral and academic ladders that he needs to take care of.
This agreement that you drafted, this is an informal
No.
contract, or is this something
No.
that university sanctioned?
The consultation with our university attorney.
If and when he does come back to play, he will be a major target on the road, maybe even at home. Are you concerned at all about how he would react in those circumstances?
At this current moment, no, I'm not concerned about that. I'm concerned about him moving forward today. And again, there's a chance he's never going to come back. So when we get closer to that point, if he continues to step up the ladder, so to speak, then we'll start to address those and get some plans in place if that were to happen.
Are you surprised at all that he did stick it out and his behavior changed even in the last week since you signed this document?
Well, I wouldn't say surprised. I would say encouraged. I know a lot of people would have folded their tent and taken off. And I know a lot of people advised him to do that. But maybe it says something about him as a young man.
And has anything changed in the last, since he signed that document? Is there more of a reality to it for him?
There's a big reality to it. And it's going to be even worse now that this is all public and he knows that he's in a fishbowl. But as he told me when he signed, I said, "You understand what you're doing?" He said, "Yes, I do, Coach."
Chip, is that the first time he had an inkling, or was? I mean, I assume that's sort of a final draft. When was the first time you said, "Hey, doing okay, thinking about something different," or something like that?
Specifically, I would say probably in the 20s, as I started to try to get the paper together.
Chip, since the Boise game, you guys have really gotten things back together offensively, especially. Are you worried that, this announcement and then later if you bring LeGarrette back in the fold, that may somehow affect the chemistry that you guys have now going on offense?
No, this decision isn't a football decision. It's not about that. It's a human being decision.
Just to be clear, is he undergoing some kind of formal anger management course?
All I'll say, again, is that we have behavioral and academic things in place for LeGarrette.
But how does the public know those are being measured
I don't know that.
by somebody that isn't an outsider?
How do they know? They don't know.
Is he a psychologist? What can you tell us?
I can tell you that he has behavioral and academic things that he has to meet to come back to this football program.
understand the principle that everybody is redeemable, and I agree with that. Why does football that we have as opposed to just success and some other thing? Why is that need to be the avenue for them?
That's a good question, George. But I think, for what he did, in my opinion, now, is that if he can do what we have in place for him, then he deserves the opportunity to play again.
How much of a factor were the things in his personal life, death in the family previous, and the origins of child since those factored in?
No, they didn't factor in, but I'm cognizant of the fact that LG's got a lot on his plate, and it doesn't, those things don't justify what happened, and we never talked about that. But I know every detail of LG's life, and he's been through a lot in this last couple of months. So, but I'm gonna stick by him. Whether he makes it through this or not, I will always stick by him.
Any more questions? Thank you.